Apologies.
Done. We can go.
All right. Welcome everybody to the Wednesday, July 10th, 2024 meeting of the Downtown Development Authority. Ms. Thompson, would you conduct roll call?
Yes. Tyler Kinley. Alex Deek.
Here.
Micah Bartelme.
Here.
Milton Tahoney. Mike Micklon. Steve Brummer.
Here.
Angela Jackson. Kim Mays.
Here.
Thressa Nichols.
Here.
And Elizabeth Barrett.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, everybody. All in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. The agenda is approved. Moving on, we have public comment. I see we have Alan Haber signed up. Mr. Haber? Thank you, sir. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you all. I've been here now 15 years on this question of the center of the city. The people voted of 27,000 or more that the center of the city in your area should be developed as a urban central park and as a civic center building, as a commons, commonly pooled resources self-managed by the users. This form of organization, which is common in human civilization pretty much since it began, until governments and corporations began to take over otherwise commonly pooled resources, has been shown as the most efficient way of organizing resources and of developing community, which is part of your mission. But in these 15 years since this campaign began, and since 5 years plus ago, 5 years and 7 months ago, the voters voted that this should be city policy in the city charter to which you are responsible. This group, most of you weren't in this group but 5 years ago, but I don't remember everybody. I was certainly here. Not one time, not on this agenda or any of the how many previous agendas you have had, has this item been on your agenda, or as near as I can tell, considered by any of your committees when in the time when you still had committees. It seems to me at least malfeasant and in some way deeply disrespectful of your obligation to the people that you should be seeing how the center of the city could well be developed. And I just read over again the invitation to public engagement in the comprehensive plan, in the Ann Arbor City plan, in the circulation plan that you're seeking public engagement on. And not one element, not one word in any of the resources you put forward has recognized the center of the city is set to be developed as an urban central park and as a civic center. Somehow you missed that? No, you didn't miss it. It's probably because the mayor doesn't like it, and perhaps Milton doesn't like it, but you should like it because that's the vote of the people. So I'm just here to remind you this is an annual meeting, I hear. So maybe this is the beginning of a new annuum.
Thank you, Mr. Haber.
Am I done?
You are, sir. That was your cue. Thank you.
Also, it was allocated that all the revenue from this parking on the parking lot be designated for the
Thank you, Mr.
development
Haber.
of the commons. You should do that.
Thank you, Mr.
When
Haber.
I asked for a FOIA, I said there's no
Mr.
information.
Haber,
How
your
could
time
that
has
be?
elapsed. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Next up, anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, we're moving on to reports from city boards and commissions. Anyone? Executive Director report, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you. Just have a couple of things. Last week, 2 of our parking operator staff, PCI staff members, Ed Wheeler, the maintenance manager, and Kelly Kowalski, the meter manager, were recognized with Community Appreciation Awards by the Ann Arbor Fire Department. Ed and Kelly were thanked for their efforts assisting the fire department with projects and events, in particular high-rise firefighter training. Chief Kennedy shared the importance of staff training on fighting high-rise fires. He noted that there are currently 7 tower cranes at work in downtown. And these high-rise buildings that are being constructed, the fire department must be ready to serve these residents. Ann Arbor does not have its own training tower, so the annual training that is done at the Forest parking structure is extremely valuable to them. Ed and Kelly were thanked for their work to coordinate structure use and parking for that day. And these employees exemplified the great work that PCI does for our downtown community. And then I also wanted to acknowledge the work done by Jada, PCI and PCI staff to support the Good Morning America broadcast last week, which maybe Milton will mention was a great success. In addition to doing the standard work that PCI has to do when any streets are closed, which means they put on meter bags and make sure that's all coordinated. Because of the street closures, the Klein's lot was also closed, and this presented a problem for the Ann Arbor Art Center. They had campers that were coming in, and these were very young campers. They were 5-year-olds. They could not be dropped off anywhere else. So Jada, PCI, and Ann Arbor Police Department worked together to ensure that these little children had a safe drop-off, and it all went really smooth, and the president of the Art Center did reach out to express her appreciation for working with us on that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Next, we have DDA members' communications. Do we have any member communications? Mr. Mahoney?
Since Maura teed me up here, the GMA experience was very positive. It was a month in the making, and you can imagine all the details that go into it, or maybe you can't. But when a network approaches you and they already have a show, you're going to fit within the way they do the show, or you're simply not going to be on it. That's kind of the bottom line. So here's the menu. Can we do this? Can we do that? It came off as close to flawless as we could probably get it. A lot of participation. It was good for the small businesses that got exposure. Since I've worked in a bunch of places, I've heard from people around the country that saw Ann Arbor featured, and so that's positive because we certainly couldn't pay for that kind of exposure. But it was good to celebrate both the bicentennial and some of our smaller businesses. It'll be interesting to see if it helps drive any additional businesses to the ones that were spotlighted. Because there was a business in Ypsilanti that got a national plug a year ago, and they were completely overrun. They couldn't manage the people that showed up. So that'd be a good problem to have. Aside from that, we are doing the official renaming of Bicentennial Park tomorrow, if the weather cooperates. And we're continuing to push bicentennial related activities. The art fair is co-branded as a bicentennial activity, so we're looking forward to supporting that. And I think that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great news. Moving on, we have our consent agenda. Just a quick reminder of process. We do need a motion to approve in a second. Discussion will happen after that, and that is a time where any item can be pulled if it needs to. Remaining items are then voted on as a group. If items are removed, they're handled separately immediately following the main vote. That said, do I have a motion to approve?
Moved.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Teresa. Discussion. Just a quick overview. These are fairly standard resolutions for our various maintenance, engineering services, the fence installation that we had discussed previously, and elevator maintenance, and some sub-grants for streetscape and transit project and fourth.
I have a comment.
Yes.
think it would be helpful for me if in our working sessions previous to this, we had even one slide or one item where we went over briefly, here's what you should expect in next month's thing, now is our time to discuss if you want to, so that we feel more, at least I feel more confident going into this, that like, yep, I remember her bringing that up in our working session, good to go. Because I think that's kind of what the purpose of the working session is to be, to familiarize ourselves with what's gonna come next.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the work session is a time for the board to get familiar with things that will be coming that require discussion. No decisions can be made at
Yeah,
a work
yeah.
session, but it's a perfect opportunity for us to review what we know is coming to the board meeting. Occasionally, there might be timing issues where we won't be able to have something at a work session that could get on a consent agenda just because of the timing of the
sure.
contract. But to your point, absolutely, we can do that.
Yeah, and I think it could be as, totally no decisions made, but as brief as just like a, whatever you know, listed
Yep.
on a slide of like, okay, before we break, we've talked about everything there was to talk about, here's what you should expect next month. And-
Yeah,
Okay.
certainly.
Unless everyone has any opposition to that suggestion.
not at all.
No, I think it's just a timing issue. Sometimes some of these things pop up, and if we need to remove them from the consent agenda and discuss, we can do that too.
Totally. Or even a call, hey, two of these you might not, we didn't have ready yet in the last working session, just a call out.
I'd like to note too that part of the discussion right now is if anyone has any questions on any of these items,
Yeah.
Correct.
to raise them.
Yeah,
But I do like point of process with you.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
good, yep.
Can I assume that all of them, I read through them, but being new, were these all discussed at a working session? at
Yeah,
some
so
point?
there's generally, Fishbeck is our engineer of record on a lot of these projects, so that's just kind of a standard ongoing maintenance thing. When we have a maintenance item that needs engineering, we have a contract come through for those services. The future fencing, we have discussed at length in many different meetings, and so this is actually approving the contract to get the work done that we've discussed a number of times previously. The Schindler elevator, that's a maintenance item as well. It kind of is what it is. When you have to do it and it comes up, you have to do it. And then the sub-grant acceptance is something that was part of the 4th Street project. We applied long ago for these federal funds. We were sub-awardee on this grant, so we are accepting the dollars for this future 4th Street project that we're doing in conjunction with the Housing Commission. So outside of normal maintenance items that come up for the parking system, these have all been discussed at length and somewhat years in the making. Is that accurate? So any further discussion or questions on the consent agenda items? That would be the resolution to approve a professional services agreement with Fishbeck for engineering and parking consulting for the Liberty Square project. The resolution to approve a contract with Future Fence for fencing installation at the parking structures. The resolution to accept a proposal from Schindler Elevator Corporation for Maynard Parking Structure Elevator Modernization. And finally, the resolution to accept a RAP 2.0 subgrant from the Ann Arbor Housing Development Corporation for the 4th Avenue Streetscape and Transit Fast Project. Seeing none, let's move to a vote. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Consent agenda is approved.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
there's one item I was remiss in mentioning, and I need to mention it here. The throne. So the question that some people, not many, seem to have about would anybody use them, I think that's been answered. The data is off the charts, and everybody's using it. It's not a certain demographic, it's not a certain anything. Some units are used more than others. Within the first week and a half, we had thousands of uses, and we had, first week and a half, we had about 1,500 different people that had used it. So it's a 6-month pilot. We got to run its course, but it's necessary, it's used, and it is a benefit to downtown and the other places it's been placed.
That's great.
Wait, one thing to jump on. It's so funny, we were talking about it in the working session, and when I was leaving the working session, I walked past the one on Washington, and 2 women were taking pictures of each other in it, like standing in it. And one person like went to go in and was waiting in line, and they like were surprised when they came in, but it was when I was like, all right, there's 3 people using it right after that meeting.
I just want to point out that in your packet today, Amber has included the latest data on the throne usage, so.
If
That's
you're-
fantastic. Yeah.
It's great.
No, I mean, you could tell even after the first weekend, it was already making an impact.
Thank you.
And it's great to hear that the trend continues to go up. So we'll look forward to seeing what we can do with that data and the next conversations it brings. Do we have any other special business or reports? Great. On to new business. We do have several resolutions to review and discuss. But first, I'd like to call up Jennifer Hall. She is coming to us with a housing fund grant request from the Ann Arbor Housing Commission for Baker Commons, and she has a presentation for us on this request.
Thank you
Jennifer.
very much. I was glad to see the RAP grant was on here because it's a good illustration of the many years of partnership we've had with the DDA. There's a lot of new members here that I haven't met, so I'm glad to meet all of you. So I do have some background of who the Housing Commission is, and I have with me a couple staff members. Tom Pierce is our construction project manager. He will be able to answer any technical questions that you have about our proposal. And Irene Yu is our planning specialist. She actually is the one that worked the most on the RAP grant, so thank you. In case you don't know what the Ann Arbor Housing Commission is, we are a public housing authority. So there's thousands of them across the United States, over 100 in Michigan. We own 20 different properties. I have a map, we'll show you where they are, where they're all in the city of Ann Arbor. But we also have a voucher program. If you've heard of the Section 8 program, we cover all of Washtenaw County as well as Monroe County. We have many thousands of vouchers. We have thousands of people on our wait list. In case anybody asks, most of our wait lists are closed unless it's a specialty type of voucher. Excuse me. And we have other family self-sufficiency programs. And one thing people don't also know is that we have a home ownership program where you can take your voucher and you can use it to buy a home, and it actually pays the mortgage instead of paying the landlord. And I'm sorry, Kelly, I'm going to have to ask you to look at the next slide. This is a breakdown of the types of units that we own and manage. We are one of the largest affordable housing providers throughout the county when you count all of our different programs. Every unit we currently own is either subsidized or targets seniors, so it has some kind of restriction on who can live there. And all of our rent is way below market rent. In case you haven't seen the recent 2024 area meeting family income, it actually went down a little bit from last year, but the median income for Washtenaw County, which is the Ann Arbor primary metropolitan statistical area, is just under $120,000. What we do and what we're required to do by HUD, we take that median income, we put it in a 4-person family, and everything else is a formula, just so you know. Just want to highlight a 1-person household because I'm talking about Baker Commons, which is all 1 bedrooms. 30% of median income is $25,100. And in comparison to the United States, which is just under $78,000 per family. Go ahead, Kelly. What we do is we take that income and we, the way you calculate in most HUD programs, which is where we live, is you say if somebody's paying more than 30% of their income on housing, whether it's rental, whether it's home ownership, it includes insurance, it includes utilities. If they're paying more than 30%, then their housing costs burdened. And so our rents are capped by HUD and depending on the program by the IRS. But if you take those incomes and you convert them into rent, so like a 1-person at 30% AMI, the maximum for them to pay would be $628, for example. Go ahead, Kelly. And just in comparison to the federal poverty level, which a lot of programs come under, An individual would be $15,000, so more like 19% of area median income for our county. We are a very high income county, in case you didn't know that. You probably knew that. Go ahead. This is a map of where all of our properties are located. Certain wards are more represented than others. These are almost exclusively built before 1975. We have torn down a few of our public housing sites and built new ones, and but otherwise these are all determined well before the 2000s. Across the county, there's only about that yellow slashing line on the bottom is showing the number of housing units, whether it's owner, whether it's rental, whether it's co-op, that has some kind of income restriction. In this case, we count up all the units restricted to 60% AMI, and only about 3% throughout the county have some kind of income restriction. So why am I showing you that? Mostly to also show you that we are a large part of the portfolio of affordable housing that's actually out there. We have a lot of partners that we work with to work with our families, and this is just some of the things that we do. Go ahead. And we use a lot of different funding sources on both doing development as well as capital improvements. The single biggest source of funding for affordable housing is actually an IRS program called Low Income Housing Tax Credits. I haven't had a chance to update this chart, which doesn't currently include the city's affordable housing millage, which was adopted in 2020. As you can see, the DDA is right there with everyone else. It takes a lot of different funding sources to pull together to not just build new housing, but to maintain the housing that we currently have. So I'm going to go to Baker Commons and talk about that property specifically. It's actually our only property in the DDA district itself. It's on the corner of Packard and Main. And it is all one-bedroom apartments. The current rent is $705 a month, including utilities, but everybody has a rent subsidy. So tenants actually pay 30% of their income on their rent, and then HUD covers the rest. So the lowest somebody would pay is $50, and some people pay more, usually a couple $100. We have a lot of elderly residents there, and more than half our residents at that location have a disability. I'm specifically here to ask for $650,000 from the DDA's Affordable Housing Fund to help pay for fire suppression in our Baker Commons building. We have two other buildings, Lurie Terrace and Miller Manor, that are within a quarter mile of the DDA district that would also be eligible for these funds. And this is just showing various fires we've had over the years, which is probably the most devastating thing you can deal with when you own property, and the impact on the residents. It's very traumatic and very costly to fix, and takes a lot of time. And what's probably even worse is then your insurance goes up. So our insurance went up by 200% because of a fire we had at Miller Manor. These are just some of the photos from that. We've only had one fatality that I'm aware of in the last 20 plus years, and unfortunately that was this year at Baker Commons in January when we had a fire in a tenant's unit. Just some more like the damage that can be caused by fires. And so what is very important right now that we've been focused on since Miller Manor had their fire, I think in 2021, is to get fire suppression in all of our units in our mid-rises. So they all have fire suppression in the common areas, but none of the actual apartments have fire suppression. So we want to add sprinkler systems into all the units. I'm going to very vaguely talk about what we are doing, and I'll have Tom talk about any details that you have, but every site is different. For example, they have asbestos at Lurie and Miller in the drywall, but not at Baker, so that's not an issue when we're installing. And we have enough electrical power and backup for our generator to not have to add that at Baker. The only thing we need to do at Baker is literally add the sprinkler system, correct? Okay, go ahead. So we hired a company to do a design, and we issued an RFP. Go ahead, Kelly. And so this is just pulling out of the RFP what it is that we are requiring as the response to our RFP, explaining what we need them to respond to. Go ahead, Kelly. And we can go back if anybody has questions on that. So we issued it in May. We got our responses back about a month ago. Jackson Automatic Sprinkler had the only response that was bidding the full scope of the work. The other two responders did not want to do the painting, cutting, drywall, all that kind of work. They also excluded some of the wiring of the fire alarm, and Jackson was the only one that had a full bid, and they were in the middle anyway, and so that is who we are going with. We have some additional costs, about $61,000 related to the design and the oversight. So the total cost is $953,000, and we are requesting $650,000 from the DDA's fund, and then the rest of it we will use the City of Ann Arbor's millage fund to pay for it. Oh, that's it. Done. That was the last slide. I have some extra slides in case you ask me questions like you asked me about what else are you guys doing?
Is this the same building that we did I think it was a furnace last year, or
It was renovations.
Concrete work,
We did it.
Yeah.
it was retaining
same
wall.
building, right? And then retaining wall, there was
Retaining
two.
wall and a chiller and
Chiller.
a parking lot and.
Those are major ones.
Parking lot, retaining
Yeah.
wall, chiller.
And we did some, added some
Is it the gazebo?
rooms for services, and we isolated where the garbage was from where all the mechanicals are. Those are the big things.
How old's the building?
81,
And remind me number of units?
64,
64 units, what bedrooms?
all one bedrooms, correct.
So Jennifer presented this version of this to us at executive committee, and we had a nice discussion. So I'll just share kind of some of the questions that we had. There's currently $720,000 in the housing fund. This is a $650,000 request. The housing fund gets another infusion of TIF funds in FY26, $400,000. At which point the fund will be $470,000. I asked Jennifer, what she thought maybe some of her subsequent requests might be in the next year or two, as we, we're a little bit depleted here. And she told me.
Well, our next biggest project is a $200 million project, which is at 350 South Fifth. So this is a small source of funding. We really actually need millions of dollars. So it would be more for if there was some other urgent issue. And Avalon Housing also has some housing in the downtown. And so they also have requested funding from the DDA too. Smaller, much smaller buildings.
Small, so there wouldn't be conflicting.
We usually check in with each other like, hey, what do you have going on this year? What do you need? And there's like that chart I showed you that had like 12 funding sources. We're constantly like working together to make sure we're not oversubscribing from one source or another.
And the other thing we discussed was balancing, the need for new housing and more units with the need to safety and maintenance of existing stock. And it was shared that this is the most important maintenance item they have in their entire portfolio. So,
Okay. Yeah, my curiosity is around, like, when I think back at the study that you guys did, where it's like, our fastest decreasing population is the age of 25 to 55, and it's like over and under is growing. And so when I think about us and where like our energy is focused or housing is focused, I always think about like that group. And obviously that isn't this group, but maybe that's okay because other people are serving housing needs and services for that group of people. And it sounds like maybe you asked that question of like, this isn't gonna take away, right, from other.
We actually serve that age group. This site happens to have a lot of single adults, but we have like senior sites, we have family sites, they're all a mixture of people.
Yeah, okay.
I think the salient thing for me that I heard was that this is a huge priority.
This is
You know,
the
and
big-
Yeah, that's
there's-
what I wanted to
There's
hear.
other ways and other funds that they're leveraging for new stock, which is also sorely needed to.
Yeah, okay.
So it's the balance between maintaining what's existing versus building new units and
Yeah,
being able to serve more people, but you can't, gotta be able to serve the people you already have in place as well.
yeah, no, that makes total sense.
Is there any kind of board policy or anything about the level of funding in the account? Would you let it run to zero?
Actually, before you today is an updated fund balance policy, which does include a fund balance policy for specifically the housing fund, which we have placed at, I believe it's 10%, because the reality is we want to be able to use those funds, right? We don't want to be sitting on a bunch of money. So we don't have a specific grant policy for housing funds.
Out of the grants that we have given out of the housing funds, have there been any recipients outside of the Housing Commission or Avalon Housing in the last several years?
Before my time, so in the last 10 years, I believe Dawn Farm received some grants. Maybe Delonis got a grant for, a small grant at one point. One of you all might. A washer and dryer, yeah, something small, but mainly, and the retaining wall, you may have done a retaining wall at Baker, but Avalon, you did
We
approve a
did that,
$28,000
yeah.
grant for a retaining wall last year for an Avalon property.
And so a 10% guidance would be $40,000.
Is it? Yes, yes.
So because we have $400,000 annual contribution, our fund balance policy would be $40,000, or if we adopt, if we have a resolution in here, if we do adopt, which would be, we would be over in this case because we'd have $70,000 remaining until FY '26.
Look at you with the numbers.
Any other questions for Jennifer? Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you very much.
Further discussion or additional comments? Hearing none, take this to a vote.
You need a motion
Oh.
in a second?
I'd like to motion.
Oh, yeah, we didn't, all right.
Motion to-
Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Well, I will move it.
Oh.
I will move the motion to approve the resolution. Thank you for the second, Russell.
I think he didn't.
Don't worry about it.
All right.
Do it. Let's just
Whoever
do
did it, let's get it
These
done.
minutes are not gonna get approved.
All in favor of approving the resolution to grant the Ann Arbor Housing Development Corporation to provide funding for a fire suppression system at Baker Commons, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Resolution passes. Next, we have a resolution to approve the Michigan class as an authorized investment institution for DDA funds. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We'll open this for discussion. As an authorized investment institution for DDA funds, the board received a presentation from the Director of Investment Services at the June board meeting. Approving this resolution will allow staff to enroll the DDA as a participant in this investment pool. As a reminder, the city of Ann Arbor, Washtenaw County, and over 800 other municipalities invest with Michigan class. Floor is open. Any questions or comments or concerns?
If I may.
Yeah.
The presentation in June was great on the reasons why we should be approving this. It makes very sound fiscal sense to use them. So I appreciate all the information that was given by the administration. I don't have any questions.
And the information from Bank of Ann Arbor, just in conjunction with it, was very helpful to see how those are going to be working together as well.
Any other comments? Lovely. All in favor of approving the resolution to approve Michigan class as an authorized investment institution for DDA funds, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. The resolution is passed. Next up, we have the resolution to adopt the DDA fund balance policy. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Support.
Thank you. The considerations behind this policy were discussed in detail at the June board work session. The DDA's current fund balance policy is 15 years old. The parking rate study, the updated investment policy approved by the board last month, and a recent insurance review informed this policy. An updated fund balance policy is a piece of the foundational work we are undertaking as we move forward with creating a new DDA development plan. Sarah, would you come up here quickly and just give us a brief summary of the proposed fund balance policy?
Yes, happy to do that. At the work session, we discussed a couple of things that informed the policy. One is the government finance officer's new directives on reserves. The other is the GASB, Government Accounting Standards Board standards that we should have built into our policy, just like the city does. So in the meeting, we discussed some of the things that the government finance officers newest recommendations propose, and we took those into account, including establishing a minimum and a maximum fund balance for funds where it makes sense to do so. Our current fund balance policy is just a straight minimum across the board. They also recommended that we give clear directions for actions that we would take should the fund balance fall below or above those minimum and maximums, and we have done that. And considering debt service as separate, even though we don't issue our own debt service, the city issues it on our behalf. And so the rating agencies aren't looking at our fund balance policy to set those rates. We still need to ensure that we can make those payments if revenues are interrupted to support the city in making those payments and maintaining their rate structure. They also recommend that we consider the fund balance specifically by fund, taking into account the nature of that fund, the nature of the revenues that support that fund, and structure the fund balance policy accordingly. So the recommendations in the policy today are for the parking fund to maintain between 22 and 30% of regular revenues. That's an operations fund primarily. We also pay our debt payments through there. So that's what drives those percentages. The parking CIP fund, very different fund. There we're recommending a minimum of 50% and a maximum of 200%. Most of the capital work that's done out of that fund is maintenance driven and based on our 20-year plan, which does do some smoothing, but we do still save and spend. That's the nature of that fund, and that's why those percentages are set the way that they are. For the housing fund, again, that 10% minimum, no maximum there. It's a save spend type of fund as well, but we don't have operations that we need to maintain in that fund, so the minimum is set very low, actually below what the government financing Officers Association would recommend for general funds. The last fund is the TIF fund, and there we've set just a minimum as well. This is another fund where we have some operations, but most of the expenditures are capital in nature and they're new construction. We don't have a lot that we need to protect operations for. We can respond very quickly should anything interrupt our revenues there, but the interruption of revenues is highly unlikely because they come in very early in the year, so we know and we can plan around them. And they're based on property taxes, which are not likely to suffer the way that our parking system did during COVID. So all of those things taken into account, as you see right there, that's the recommendation in the fund balance policy. And we'll keep an eye on this, of course, going forward, monitor it every year through the budget process and when we're doing our capital planning.
Thank you, Sarah. Open for discussion. Any questions about the new recommendations or the fund balance policy?
No, just seconding how good it was. Yeah, I really appreciate you were very patient walking us all through it.
Municipal finance.
Yeah, there you go.
Everyone's favorite subject. Well, great. We'll take this to a vote. All in favor of the resolution to adopt the DDA fund balance policy, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Resolution passes. In your packet, you do have the DDA staff report. Always good information in there, including those thrown statistics that we discussed. Please review at your leisure. No action is required. That takes us to ending public comment. Or do we do that in this one?
Yes, you don't have it on here.
To close it?
Yeah, number 13.
Oh, it's not on mine for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes.
Okay. We are open for public comment. Is there anyone who wishes to comment? Seeing none, we move to adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Hi.
All opposed, please say nay. We are adjourned. We're going to roll directly into our annual meeting. Ms. Thompson, would you please conduct roll call?
Tyler Kinley, Alex Deep,
Here.
Micah Bartelme.
Here.
Milton Tahoney,
Here.
Mike Micklon, Steve Brummer,
Here.
Angela Jackson, Kim Mays.
Here.
Thressa Nichols.
Here.
And Elizabeth Berry.
Here.
Thank you. We'll go right into new business. The officer election. We'll be nominating and voting on the treasurer, vice chair, and chair positions. Nominations are made from the floor. The term of office is 1 year and begins at the close of the annual meeting. Do I have a nomination from the floor for treasurer?
I don't know what to say now, but sure.
And?
I'll nominate Steve.
Okay, lovely. Do I have a second for Steve Bremer as treasurer?
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor of appointing Steve Bremer as treasurer for this year term? Please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Congratulations, Steve. You're the new DDA treasurer.
Easiest extra work you ever got.
I am pleased to nominate Michael Micklon for the position of vice chair. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Alex. All in favor of appointing Mike Micklon for vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Mike Micklon is now the vice chair.
I'd like to make a nomination.
Yes, Steve.
I'd like to nominate Micah for board chair for his second term.
Second.
Thank you, Alex. All in favor of myself serving as board chair, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Where are we? Do we have any?
Just the final resolution to appoint the executive committee.
That's right, sorry. Finally, we have a resolution to appoint the DDA Executive Committee. Do I have a motion? Thank you. A second?
Second.
All in favor of appointing the Executive Committee, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Resolution is approved. Do we do public comment for the annual meeting? Would anyone wish to comment for the annual meeting? Seeing none, we'll move to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of adjourning the annual meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. The annual meeting is adjourned.